Now it's a great pleasure to welcome Steve Pearce from these nuclear test veterans who have heard on Zoom many occasions. So powerful. Over to you, Steve.
Hi, good evening. I'm here to tell you about a scandal that has been a stain on this country's history books for 70 years. Monday marks the 70th anniversary of the first British nuclear weapon test. The 22,000 service personnel that have been involved in those tests ever since have never received justice for what happened to them. I'm going to tell you about two cases. The first is a man I admire incredibly called John Morris, who witnessed four of these nuclear detonations as an 18-year-old conscript sent to Christmas Island without choice. He describes so powerfully the effect of witnessing these bombs. It would make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. He described his whole body boiling. And as has been mentioned before, there was a lack of PPE. What he was dressed in, along with all his colleagues, was a short-sleeved shirt, a pair of shorts, sunglasses. How close do you think it's safe to be near a nuclear explosion? Him and his colleagues were 8 miles and made to watch. It knocked them off their feet. Now, these men apparently do not deserve a medal. In 2018, we asked for a medal for these men. And in 2020, the government came back and said, there's not enough risk involved. Now, let that sink in. 8 miles from a nuclear explosion as not being risky. If they're that safe, why are they a weapon? Now, we know the MOD was aware of the effects, and we are aware of what they wanted, because we have uncovered documents that allude to the fact they wanted to see the effect of radiation on equipment and personnel. They were using these men as guinea pigs. They also had blood tests and urine tests. Can we get hold of them? No. They exist, we know they exist, but the MOD consistently refuses to give us access. I am trying to fight for my dad's blood tests at the moment. I'm not getting very far, but I'm not going to give up. When John came home, he settled down with his wife, and when he was 24, he had a son. And at 4 months old, the child died. Well, he went to see him in the morning, and in his cot, he died. Now that's a tragedy, we all agree with that. But it was compounded by the fact that when he was at the hospital with his son, the police arrested him and his wife for murder. That was since been rescinded, and they just said it was a cot death. John didn't believe this, because they also said it was pneumonia, and he said that child was not ill when I put him to bed. It took him 60 years to get the coroner's report. 60 years, which proves that he had a lung condition. It wasn't pneumonia. His lungs had not developed properly, and John has blamed himself for that ever since. Now, John's story is not unusual, and I can tell you my story. My dad served at Maralinga in South Australia. When he was there, they conducted something called the minor trials, and these were basically reckless experiments where they were trying to discover what would happen if you blew up plutonium with conventional explosives. What would the dispersal be like? Basically creating nuclear accidents. And my dad's protective gear, pretty much the same as John's. Now, yes, the sand was contaminated, but the only safety measure was a single strand wire fence, supposedly separating the contaminated area from the non-contaminated area. This is a desert. it's windy, the sand blows. It gets in your hair, gets in your face, gets in your food, gets in your water, gets in your vehicle, gets in your bed. This sand was contaminated with alpha radiation. These men were soaked in alpha radiation. This is the radiation the government never tested for. Alpha radiation is the one that if you ingest it, it damages your DNA. Now, Dad came home, and 10 years later I come along. Visibly, something's not right. Now, I have, apart from the short stature, I was born with hydrocephalus, lumbar lordosis, which is curvature of the spine, and the leg bent 45 degrees the wrong way. Now, my short stature is undiagnosable. There's 200 forms of known short stature. Mine is unique. All they can tell me is it's a genetic mutation, no one else like it in the world. And this is not unusual because of the 155,000 descendants of the service personnel, a lot of them have unique illnesses or extremely rare illnesses. And they are 10 times more likely to have birth defects than the average person in society. Their wives and children also have a highly elevated miscarriage rate. The health effects are unbelievable. But it doesn't just affect first generation, second generation descendants. It's going to damage the DNA for 500 years. So this problem, although the MOD likes to think there's only about 1,500 veterans left, we can wait, the problem will go away. It won't. Because every year, children are being born to descendants with health defects. It's a scandal. They refuse to do any research. They refuse to acknowledge or even recognise the service that these men gave. It's thanks to them that we have a nuclear deterrent. Whether we agree with it or not, the government like our nuclear deterrent. They like it so much, but they refuse to give any recognition to the men who went out there, did the tests, and got it sorted. It's a disgrace. Now, Hillsborough law would help us, because it would help us get our records. It would stop the MOD lying. We know for a fact that, as I mentioned earlier, the medal situation, where they were basically told there was no risk involved. The medal committee is supposed to be independent. It was taking advice from the MOD. And guess what the MOD said? So don't give them. So they did. It's a scandal. They're not independent. It needs reviewing. So Hillsborough law would give us access to the truth. The state took our health. We just want the truth. We want the records. We want to know what happened. We want the research. And those men, all they've asked for is a bit of tin, a medal. Give it them. It's not a hard ask. But most of all, do it for the descendants as well. Because there's children that aren't born yet. I always swore I would never have a child. I would never pass on my genetic damage to a child. But a few years ago, I met an amazing lady. She's now my wife. And we had a child. But I've always felt bad because I feel I've played genetic Russian roulette with his life. And that, even through pregnancy, terrified me. At the scans, I was constantly asking the radiographer, are the limbs short? Does it look okay? Is there anything wrong whatsoever? And it just, until I saw him, I was just, and that should be a joyous time. And it wasn't, it was just time of worry for me. Thankfully, he's perfect. He's 17 months old on Sunday, and he's amazing. But the worry doesn't stop there, because a lot of the illnesses suffered by the descendants happen in adolescence, and a lot of them are things like cancer. So I've got this worry that in 5, 10, 15 years' time, he ain't going to be ill. And I don't want to think that me and my dad killed my son. because that's what it would be. And until we get the research, we won't know how to help them. We want him to be able to go to the doctor and say, I've got this problem. My grandfather was at the nuclear test, and that should set off a process. There is no process. You go to the doctor now, you mention nuclear tests, they'll say, what tests? Nobody knows about them. So we need education as well. There's a whole raft of things we need. But Hillsborough law would give us a start. It would give us access to the truth. And that's the starting point. I'd like to thank you all for listening to me today.